Our guest today has a very big idea and a proposal he'd like to suggest for Tesla. In what he calls CarBNB, he's asking the question, what if Tesla makes home chargers rentable? If you own a Tesla and have a charger at home, might you consider renting it out much like Airbnb when you aren't using it? The number of charging stations would explode exponentially. Plus, as the host, you might be able to make up to $4,800 per year. So let's dive deeper and see if this makes sense. As a bonus, we even have a mock-up of how the Tesla app would work for you as a guest and as a host. Marc Folch has 12 years experience designing game-changing product solutions. Currently, he's the Director of Innovation Research and Insights for Canada's largest payments company and also occasionally advises startups. Welcome, Marc. How are you doing?
Thanks, Herbert. Really appreciate you having me on. It's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure having you on. I was very intrigued when you shared this idea with me. I think it's a very big idea, but we'll let the audience decide. Now, why don't you tell me, why don't we start with that? Like, why is this idea something worth talking about?
Well, we'll get into it a little bit in the video, but when I started to run the numbers based upon the data that I could find, what came out was really interesting. It could be a $3.2 billion a year profitable business for Tesla, which could add about $255 billion to their valuation. So if it's anywhere close to that, it's a significant opportunity.
Yeah, those are very, very big numbers, but also the benefits on, I mean, like, it's like I think you called it a win-win-win situation. And it really seems like it could be. So that's why I'm trying to figure out, am I overthinking this or not? So you've got slides and also you've got a demo of the actual app. You really went ahead here. So tell me more about this opportunity. This is your deck here called Tesla CarBNB, great name, an opportunity assessment.
Well, it's a working title, but fundamentally, I think a lot of people feel that there are still a lot of the world that is a little bit short on chargers. And this is only going to scale very significantly as Tesla continues to grow and opens up the NACS charger standard internationally. So if you could pull up the next slide there, that is a screenshot of the superchargers around Toronto right now. Mm-hmm. To give you a bit of context, about 2 million people live in that area. And that doesn't count probably another 1 million plus people that commute in for work. But there are only 3 superchargers in there and a clump of destination chargers in the southern downtown core. Mm-hmm. And while Tesla scales hardware better than most companies in the world, even they're limited by how much of their capital it makes sense to put into building superchargers each year. Based on the numbers I found, it's roughly about 35,000 a stall. And when they're growing to produce about 10 million cars a year, which they've said publicly, their fleet is going to grow easily 24 times as big as it is now. So just to keep the same density, same ratio of superchargers to cars, we're looking at going from 50,000 today to 1.2 million. And that's just for Tesla. That doesn't even count all the other brands.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest problems. First let's start with that, right? My understanding is the top 2 problems why people don't buy electric vehicles today is price, and the second one is range. So the concern about, are they going to be able to find a charger whenever they need it? The second issue that I find, I think it's a big issue, is that not everybody lives in a house with a garage that has a wall charger. Many people live in apartments. They live in houses that don't have garages and so forth. And so they're kind of like trying to find makeshift ways to have to always go to a supercharger to charge. And like you said, there's still not quite everywhere, certainly not in the suburbs. That sounds very interesting. Is that correct? Is that how you would position the problem?
Absolutely. Actually, I just saw an article this morning from your neck of the woods out in the North Shore of Vancouver, where apparently there was a bit of a traffic jam because there's too many people out there that live in condos that are not allowed to have chargers in them. So they all have to go to the supercharger to charge. And that has downsides in terms of capacity, wait time. It's also harder on the batteries. But why don't we go over to the next slide and talk about some of those headline numbers. Let's start digging into the details so people understand what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
So behind this is a full economic model. And I took all the data I could find about charger costs, number of Teslas, electricity costs, parking rates in cities around the world. And plugging into them, this is what I got. So if it grows to 3 million part-time spots rented globally, and we'll talk a little bit more about why that's not an unreasonable number,
Mm.
that could generate, as I mentioned, about 3.2 billion in extra profit for Tesla, which
Significant.
is huge, right? That's a lot of extra value on top of everything else that they're doing. And for a program like this, it could be very complementary in other ways and wouldn't require a whole lot of capital for them to invest. It could also save them about 13 billion in capital costs because they don't need to build as many superchargers themselves. The owners bring the capital for these chargers. And as you mentioned, for an owner in an in-demand location, they could generate upwards of $4,800 a year in revenue. So, as you were mentioning, from the cost being prohibitive for owning an EV, if you have $4,800 a year coming in, that covers a fair bit of car payment, right?
Yeah. So can I ask? Yeah, I want to ask a quick question here. You said that Tesla could make money, but this is between a consumer and an owner. Why? How does Tesla make the money? I mean, I'm assuming it's like Airbnb where they take a cut. Is that the business model?
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. So in the current version of the model, it gave us the numbers you see there. The assumption is basically owner keeps 60%, Tesla keeps 40%. And while that might seem high to some people, realistically for an owner, as you'll see with the user experience, it's pretty much set and forget. You don't need to do anything. You basically just say yes, and you allow Tesla to sometimes send people over to park in your spot when you're not there. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to market. You don't need to manage. You don't need to do anything. The money just plops into your account. So really low barrier to entry. And I think pretty attractive for a lot of homeowners, especially with a lot of people feeling a little bit stretched today with inflation.
Yeah, I guess so. It's just like I guess I'm imagining my own home, right? I do have a garage though, so I would have to give somebody, I guess, the garage code to open up the garage to let them in there. Or are you suggesting that people might have wall chargers? I have seen quite a number of homes where they don't have the door and it's just a open carport.
Yeah, I think initially probably it would be open up to the most accessible ones that are outside the garage, but in the business model, we do have some elements of design that would help solve a little bit the access to condo undergrounds, the access to home chargers. I mean, Tesla's already have the option to be able to have that integration with the car to a certain extent. Doesn't work everywhere, but it works in a lot of doors at the moment. So that could be an element. But
yeah,
go ahead.
Oh, the other thing I was going to say was that I do know that, I mean, if this works, I would do the math personally and I go, why don't I go ahead and add another wall charger outside of my garage?
Absolutely.
In front of, underneath the basketball hoop or something like that, and let them use it because, hey, if I don't mind and people are going to make money out of this and it'll pay for itself. I think it's like $1,000 plus or minus whatever that electrician costs and all that.
Yeah, it's really not that prohibitive. I mean, even if you're installing in a condo, and let's say it's 3,000, 4,000, if you're able to make $4,800 a year, that's a pretty good investment, right? And you still keep the capital advantage of that being now improved on your spot. Your place is worth more. But admittedly, even in the assumptions of the model, we don't assume that this is going to work everywhere, right? It really is going to depend on where your location is. You need to be close to some place that people want to go, either a big office building where they're parking and going to work, or an attraction or something like that, right? If you're out in suburbia and there's nothing within walking distance and there's 50 other chargers around your house, it's not necessarily going to have a lot of demand right there. So the assumption is that this applies only to a certain percentage of chargers, but when it does, it works really well.
I guess I also think that what if I live in suburbia and then I have a garage and I have a Tesla and it's going well, but I have a friend or a neighbor who doesn't have access to a garage and then they can just go use mine basically monthly, daily, weekly, they come in and charge and I'm just letting you do it. And it's all, the whole setup is all arranged by Tesla. And it's like you said, an Airbnb model. And so come in whenever you want, charge.
That's a great idea, actually. I hadn't really thought about that use case, but you're 100% right. It could be a very interesting opportunity, even more than what we've modeled in this.
And then of course the other idea would be if I'm traveling and then I go off and meet a friend at their house and then I need to charge, I don't need to go find the supercharger in the city or whatever near the highway. I could, oh, look, there's 20 of them in this neighborhood. And so
Mhm.
then I feel comfortable that at least one of them might be available at the time that I need it before I go home or something like that. So
Absolutely, absolutely. And
very
you're really
interesting.
hitting the nail on the head. Why don't we actually go to the next slide where we
Yeah.
can go a little bit deeper into some of the advantages there. So in putting together this model, obviously we were looking to solve the challenge of scaling the public NACS charger infrastructure, but also reducing how much capital Tesla has to spend on its charger network while increasing its profit from the capital that it does spend. And another element is that it potentially rekindles the charger network advantage. As you know, superchargers used to only be for Teslas, but they're now opening that up to all the other manufacturers. And it used to be a really strong additional reason to buy a Tesla, right? You were the only ones who got access to this great, reliable, all over the place charger network. And so with this competitive advantage starting to go away, CarBNB could be a way to rekindle that. So if only Teslas, at least initially, are able to do
Mhm.
this, book parking and chargers, then it's a new convenience advantage for only Tesla vehicles. And there's actually a good reason for it to be only open to Teslas at first, because to remotely monitor quality of service, they would need to have access to the car's cameras and other data, which they obviously don't have from other manufacturers on day one. On the
Yeah.
EV, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, and then I love the concept. I mean, the other one is now that we've opened it up to all the car makers pretty well adopting the superchargers, people are concerned.
Yes,
Hey, it's going to be busy now.
with
In a
reason.
couple of years, it's going to be very busy. And so, can they build more superchargers in time, or are there going to be areas that
Yeah,
it's
it's
going
a
to be a
lot of
bad
a
experience?
lot of company resources focused on that, right? From the EV owner perspective, as you very rightly point out, when there are tons of available, reliable, and safe chargers pretty much everywhere you go, you don't also have to worry about hunting for a parking spot ever again. You just basically pre-book it as the last step in setting up your navigation when you find your destination, and it's there for you. You don't need to worry about charging. And it's also, yeah, go ahead.
No, keep going.
It's also a bit more sustainable for the car batteries because those people you were mentioning that live in condos who have to always go to a supercharger. That's a little bit rough on the battery if you're using superchargers predominantly for all your charging, right? And they also have to then make a detour, get to them, wait for it to charge, and then move as soon as it's done because otherwise they get the extra fees. So this is a solution where you can basically set your car and forget it. You go do whatever it is you need to do, and you just come back, and your car's charged. So it's got a very useful place in the overall charging infrastructure.
I'm just wondering if right now when you go to a supercharger and you park it there, typically you can go to use the washroom. There's usually, a supermarket or some sort of restaurant, and that's what people do. They eat. Here, there won't be anything, right? You just have to park it and stay in your car. But luckily, the car actually has an entertainment system, right?
Yeah,
Unless the homeowner is very even more adventurous and says, "Come on in, buy, buy an,
sure, it's
buy a coffee."
possible. Absolutely. I mean, we've seen with Airbnb that people are willing to welcome strangers into their home. So why not?
Very interesting.
But
Okay.
why don't we, yeah, great. Go to the scenarios. Let's make it a little bit real for people and talk about sort of putting ourselves in the shoes of when this might be useful. So in the first one, say you're a Tesla owner, you live in the suburbs, and you commute downtown for work 3 days a
Mhm.
week. Currently pay 25 bucks a day for your parking downtown, but it has no charger. So that means you're paying about 300 bucks every 4 weeks for parking. And maybe some days when it's busy, you have to hunt around for a spot. But if you fast forward to a CarBNB situation, you would book that spot from another Tesla owner who lives near your workplace, but then commute somewhere else for their own work. So you're basically just using their spot when they're out. And the system's dynamic pricing would set the price a bit below market, let's say $270 instead of $300 that you're paying today for those 4 weeks. And now you know exactly where your spot will always be. You can charge on site if you choose, but you're not forced to. And you save money over your current parking solution. And the owner gets money in their pocket. So it really is, you were mentioning, is win-win-win.
Mm-hmm.
Now, second scenario, let's say you're going to somewhere where the round trip is further away than your car's range. Today, you need to identify a supercharger on your route. The car does that, but still, you need to detour and stop specifically for it, and then wait until your battery's charged and move your car immediately after. Otherwise, you get the idle fees. With CarBNB, you'd book a spot at or very near to your destination, park, plug in, go do what you came there to do, no detour, no waiting. You just come back to your charged car and pay about the same as you would have otherwise paid for parking plus supercharger use. So it's a lot simpler and really beneficial to a lot of people. Now, finally, is that use case that you mentioned. And you really got it in terms of the scale of that. Another member actually on Tesla Motors Club, M. Bizzolo, mentioned to me a similar idea that there are a lot of people who live in condos who just aren't allowed to have charge infrastructure yet there. And so today, if they're going all the way to the supercharger, not a great experience for them. I mean, they basically recreated the gas station issue, right? Mm-hmm. So this would allow them to either rent something within a couple blocks of their condo with a much more leisurely time scale, or even better, right by their workplace. So it's zero detour, zero hassle for them.
I've got another scenario for you.
All right, go for it.
Vacation. So let's say I'm going to to a lake out in the middle of the state, and there's unlikely there's going to be a supercharger there, but there's going to be homes that they cater to the vacation goers, the tourist. I mean, with this, all
right?
Mm-hmm. What's that?
So why don't we get into a little bit of the logistics about why this would work? Let's go to that next slide if we could. Perfect. Thanks. So in the business plan and model, and again, I think we'll have the links to those in the comments below, so people can go poke in, they can go change whatever assumptions they want, go and challenge the model. See what you think is realistic, what isn't. If you can find better data, plug it in there. Let's really stress test this thing and see if it works or not. I'd love to get feedback from anybody who wants to play around with it. But the current version was based upon as many details as I could get about how many chargers there are out there, prices around the world, and so forth. And the first question is there enough scale on both the charger supply side and the parking demand side to make this work? So there have been about 5 million Teslas produced worldwide to date. About 1.8 million of them were just the last year, so clearly scaling impressively. And with their stated goal of hitting about 10 million vehicles produced per year, if a life of a Tesla is about what a normal car is, which is 12 years, that means there'll eventually be about 120 million Teslas driving around. Most Tesla owners buy wall chargers, and if the profit is there, just like you mentioned earlier, I think that there's going to be a good number of people who would buy one specifically for this.
Mm-hmm.
So it's probably not unrealistic to assume at some point in the future, when things are fully at scale, not anytime soon, but when things are fully at scale, there could be about 100 million Tesla wall chargers out there. So is it realistic to assume that 3% of them might participate in a program like this? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good number.
It seems like it's not way out there, right? We're not saying 60% of all people are going to be in this.
Mm-hmm.
But if 3% is the number, that's what gets us some pretty crazy profitability here. On the demand side, when you eventually add in all the non-Tesla EVs, you're talking about adding from other manufacturers, this gets into hundreds of millions of cars that are potential renters of this. For comparison, it's estimated that there are about 1.47 billion active cars in the world today. So we're not even assuming a very high percentage of these being EVs and being able to rent from these slots. So, high level, first pass, numbers don't seem completely crazy, do they?
They don't. And then actually, I'm going to challenge you a little bit because, you were saying in order for this to work, you need to have a scale of cars available and superchargers or wall chargers available, and then
Yep.
drivers who want it. I don't know if you need that. This model seems like it could work, like almost like you said, Airbnb. It's not like they had to wait until they had all these people that are willing to pay for it. Like if you just had a handful, and let's say it's just one city, why wouldn't that already start working?
That's very fair. I think you're right. I think that it could be very viable to do a pilot like that. That could actually be a really interesting way to test this with low lift.
Yeah. The only thing would be, like you say, that you would only pick the ones that have high volume, like near the cities, those kind of things, maybe, and then break up. Anyways, yeah, agreed.
Well,
Yeah,
to
maybe
your
it
point,
won't
I
make up.
think that it would be worthwhile at first to really only send the invite to people who are in locations that are likely to be a high demand. So, you can test it, work out the bugs with a small handful of people who are going to likely be happy and have a good experience with lots of renters and so forth, and then scroll it up from there.
Yeah. Okay, let's take a look at the model.
Okay. So, when we look at this, hang on, was there another slide in there maybe?
Mm,
So slide on. Okay, no, we hadn't finished that other one. So in terms of scale, I think it's worth talking a little bit about the right side of that one, the hardware, software, network, and security. So one of the reasons why I think you really hit the nail on the head there with the idea of an easy test today is that a lot of the pieces are already in place right now. Tesla's wall chargers are already internet connected. They could be remotely monitored for issues. They can be set to allow charging only for a specific vehicle, and they could precisely track the amount of charge given, which obviously we need for billing. So pretty much all the hardware is already there to do this. Tesla has the phone app and in-car navigation interfaces needed to be the software platform for this service. They just need some software and UX tweaks, as you'll see in the clickable prototype. The company already has that established network of people with chargers and cars. They've also got their mobile technicians that can fix any issues. And finally, and I think that this is actually probably more important than most people would think at first, the car's 360 cameras. Because with those, Tesla can query those and verify that the location is safe, well lit, make sure that it was free and available when the person arrived, can monitor in case there's any issues that arise and validate who did what. So it really allows them to remotely monitor and probably in a largely automated fashion with Tesla Vision to be able to tell whether any complaints are justified and who is at fault for anything.
I love it. I mean, the other thing too is, if you can explain to me a little bit, how is this any different from destination chargers, which exist today? So Tesla already has superchargers. They've got, just like you showed in your, initial first slide with Toronto, there's all these destination chargers. Typically it's in hotels or restaurants who've agreed to be a destination charger, and they charge when you come in and use it. Sometimes it's like a hotel, they just add it to the daily charge or something like that. But other times, maybe they will charge you on a per use basis. So it's just almost like an expansion of that program beyond hotels and restaurants and businesses to us, retail.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's very complementary as part of the overall charging landscape. A little bit like Airbnb is often complementary to hotels. Hotels aren't going
Yeah.
away, right? They each have their individual place, people who like them, and location-wise, just having both at our disposal gives us so much more flexibility, right? So if we look at some of the use cases we talked about, if you're commuting into work, odds are your workplace is probably not right next to a hotel for a destination charger, but there's probably someone who has a home charger close to where you work. So it just opens up the opportunities and helps meet the need in a more dynamic, flexible way.
Love it. Okay, let's get to the model, and then we're gonna then do a demo of the actual app that you've mocked up. I love it. You've done so much work here. Thank you so much, Marc. Go ahead.
Well, this was actually just a weekend and a couple of evening nights. This is kind of what I've been doing for a long time, so we could throw this stuff together pretty quickly. But
Yeah.
from the model's perspective, by the way, again, the link will be in the comment. Anybody can modify this however you want, see what assumptions we put in here. But whenever possible, the assumptions in here now have all been based upon data that I've been able to find on the internet, utility rates, parking rates around a whole bunch of global cities. And it also assumes that there are high, medium, and low demand locations in urban, suburban, and rural zones. And the reason why that's built into the model is because it lets us make an assumed usage and pricing profile that's appropriate for each of these. Obviously, people aren't going to be paying the same parking rate in a high demand downtown location as a low demand country location. So this lets us adopt the pricing and the usage profile to each of these places. And it assumes that spots are only rented maximum when owners aren't using them. So maximum, never 100% of the time. Only about 28% of an average week is the highest demand urban location in this model. As we touched on a little bit earlier, it's also really about estimating the opportunity size when it's at maturity. It's not the next couple of years. So if anybody's having a gut reaction, 3 million, that's crazy. We're not talking next year or the year after. We're talking eventual maximum size. And if you look at the blue bars on the right side there, that shows you the average estimated earnings per year from each usage profile. So heavy usage urban takes home the most, 4,800 a year. But again, that's only if it's booked 28% of the time when the owner's out. So in theory, if an owner wants to make a high demand spot available 24/7, they could potentially earn a lot more than that. But that's not a normal use case, so we didn't make that the baseline. And really the key to this being realistic is that owners get this money with almost no risk or action. When they're not using their spot, occasionally people come park in it, leave them some money, and it's basically free cash with minimal barriers to adoption. So the thinking is that it's really not going to require a massive revenue per year to get a good number of people to say, yeah, okay, sure, give me some free money. Now, did you
Exactly. I was going to ask you, I know 3 million, but how many superchargers are there today? And I just looked it up. It says 50,000 superchargers around the world. This is around the world. So even just your first tier here, 50,000 locations already, and you're basically doubling the number of locations available to charge.
Yeah. And bear in mind also from a demand perspective, a home location isn't going to be able to service the same number of cars as a supercharger, right? So the charging is lower. People are going to park before and after they charge as they feel convenient. But there's definitely a lot of market capacity to absorb quite a few of these units. And you already brought everyone's attention down there to the bottom of the model, but that's basically, as you can see, a sensitivity analysis. So if you or somebody listening to this says, $3 million or 3 million locations, that's nuts. That's never going to get that big. Well, pick a number and see what the impact is. Because even if it's only, 500,000 locations worldwide, that's still $500 million of profit for Tesla and could add 36 billion to its valuation. For context, AirBNB right now has over 6 million houses for rent online. And I think most people would agree that letting a stranger stay in your house is a lot more inconvenient and intrusive than letting them park in your spot, right? So clearly the sharing economy is working for a lot of people, and it's not for everybody, but there's definitely a market demand for this out there. I think most CEOs would be pretty happy to build a $36 billion standalone business, let alone a bolt-on to their existing business that requires very little capital to set up.
Yeah, 36 billion if it's only 500,000. But
But
actually, I would say that my guess would be that Tesla would not make this a profit generating business. Like you had said earlier, there's so many benefits to both the owner and the EV driver. You know that Tesla, Elon actually said that, I think he alluded to that the partnership that they have with these OEMs, they may
mhm.
not be making money. That they might be making money on the cut of the actual charging. I don't think it's going to be a 60%, 40% split. It might be very little. That's not their goal.
That could be. That could be. I mean, the point of the model was really to look at how big of an opportunity this could be and how much money it could make in aggregate for everybody involved. If Tesla chooses to lower the margins there, that works even better. Homeowners make more and or renters pay less, and it scales even quicker. That's entirely possible. Or they could go somewhere in the middle and take a good chunk of that profit and plow that back into making better, cheaper, faster cars. Whatever works for their strategy, this gives them a lot of flexibility and it brings a tremendous value to pretty much everybody in this chain. So
I love it. Yeah, it sounds like a good idea. The other thing that comes to mind is that if you expand it to homeowners, they would be motivated maybe to do solar panels, mega packs, to then wall chargers, and then it becomes free for them to charge. Like it's very well free. It's like the sun charging. It's basically what they're saying with all the superchargers. They're going to put solar, uh, roofs for all those to charge it for free. And then here, it's like Tesla does not have to spend the money because you got the homeowner. So it's like a win-win-win-win scenario.
I love how you think, Herbert. That's great. 100%.
Yeah.
Why don't we take a look at
Very.
the mock-up and start showing people what this might look like in their apps?
Okay, let me see if I can set that up. Let's see that. This is fun. I can't believe you did this. First of all, it's just gorgeous of an app, of a situation here that you did.
Oh, thank you. I have to admit, I give a lot of credit to the software I use called Figma. It makes this
Yep.
stuff so easy.
Yeah, for sure.
And
I use it too.
again, just
Hmm.
calling out, not laying any claim whatsoever to any of this IP or Tesla's designs. This is 100% all Teslas. This is just for illustration purposes. So most people listening who have a Tesla, you'll recognize this standard homepage when you open up
Hmm.
your app. There's just one small change. So in the upper right, where normally there's the small box for the referral program, it's now a money icon.
Yep.
So this takes us over to a modified page that's now your hub for earning and rewards. And this could over time also become sort of a central starting point for managing things like virtual power plant, robo-taxi when it goes live, and any other ways you can potentially earn within the Tesla ecosystem. So instead of just being for refer, now we've also got the renting of your charger below there. And in addition to that second blue box, to get started, there's a different icon for CarBNB down at the bottom. And I will be the first to admit I am not an icon designer. I don't think that this one's it. I was going for a bit of a
No.
combination between a lightning bolt and a ZZZ for sleeping. But if there are
No.
any icon designers or graphics people out there, please feel free to reach out. Would love to do a collaboration and make something that looks a little better here.
All right.
Nonetheless, let's click on Rent Your Charger. So here it tells you about the program and estimates how much you'd be able to earn based on known demand and rates in your charger's location. Notice how it gives participants the opportunity to either get earnings paid out every month or to accumulate them so they can be used at the Tesla store with a 10% bonus. And the thinking here around the bonus was really that since the Tesla store already has a much higher profit margin than 10%, by incentivizing people to reinvest their spend there, it would keep more of the payout money from CarBNB in-house for Tesla, while the customer is happy that they got an extra 10% discount. Again, win-win both ways.
And just triggered a thought to me, by the way. Do you know
Yeah.
that if you have everybody who owns a Tesla has a referral link, if somebody clicks that link and buys a Tesla because of your referral link, you get paid referral credits. those referral credits shocked me that they're pretty lucrative.
Yeah.
You could get almost the equivalent of $1,000. And see this picture you got here, a wall charger? You could basically, with one referral, pay for a wall charger.
That's a great point. And actually, now I'm vibing off of how you're thinking there. Maybe even referral credits can be used to pay for rented parking spots. Keeps it in the ecosystem even more.
Love it. This is gorgeous. Well done. Okay.
Love it.
Mm-hmm.
So let's click on renting now there. And that'll give us a bit of a pop-up, terms and conditions, mandatory part of life these days. And if we click OK, it gets us to the scheduling page. So here, the owner gets a color-coded graph that shows them when the highest demand would likely occur for their spot. The dark green bars, that's when you're likely to make the most money, which can help inform their decision about when they might want to make their spot available. Then there's a selector below that where they can choose to let people rent their spot for particular days and times for a whole month in advance. Basically, a monthly subscription to that spot, which would be a bit of at a discount. But the advantage to the owner is that they know that it's going to be booked 100% during those time frames. And then at the bottom, you've got the interface for being able to click the days and the times of the week that you're committing to making your spot available for rent. So let's say you only go to work on Monday, and if you click on the down arrow by Monday, you can pick days there. You pick 9 to 5 or 8 to 6, and up top, it's already in there, but that white box you see around that time frame on the upper graphic would show you the areas that you've made available.
Right here. Yeah,
So,
understood.
there's just one more bit to this, and that's that last box down there at the bottom, because this sets up your regular schedule, but life changes. Sometimes we go away on vacation and might want to make a bunch more days available, or we've got company over for the weekend or the week, and they need the spot. So if you click on that last selector there at the bottom, you can pick individual days where you either allow or disallow renting ahead of time whenever you need that spot. So keeps it really nice and convenient, flexible for the homeowner, and allows Tesla to plan its capacity and renting around that. All right, so let's get out of that. And, nope, sorry, keep going forward. Yep, click that blue one at the bottom. Perfect. All right, so now that we've set up availability and the orders start coming in, let's take a look at bookings by clicking in the upper right there. So here you could see your current earned balance, decide to have it paid out this month or let it accumulate, as well as any future dates that your spot has already been booked. And if you click on those future dates, you'll see the exact times that your spot has been rented out. Now, you like it?
I'm loving it. Yep.
Yeah, really this process of kind of doing a rapid prototype like this, it really challenges you to think through what's the user experience and what are the things that are missing or the hurdles they might run into, and you can really rapidly evolve the design so it's actually fairly advanced without having to build anything. It's pretty powerful stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So if we click on out of that and go see history, here you get a more detailed analytics and past earnings with the full records of each recent session. And if you click on one of those sessions, so let's see the top one on the right there, there's a little down arrow, a little bit to the left there. Yep, there you go. You see the total revenue, your electricity cost, how long the renter stayed as a percentage of their book time. And it also, which I think is important, and we touched on a little earlier, as an owner, it lets you complain about whether a renter did something inappropriate or caused damage.
Mm-hmm.
Complaining about a renter would lead to Tesla automatically querying your car and their car to get the data, the camera footage around that, and be able to automatically assess whether this claim is legitimate. If it is, they could even automatically debit the renter's card and charge an appropriate fee to compensate the owner, or even put together a preliminary police report for the owner to download if necessary. And again, these are just edge cases, but as Airbnb's found, it's really important to get strong mechanisms in place in advance to detect, enforce, and remedy any bad behavior, because it makes people respect each other and know that there are consequences. And when you get that in place ahead of time, it prevents a lot of bad behavior before it ever happens. You end up with a great service people can rely on.
Mm-hmm. When you compare it to Airbnb, one of the issues that they have is they cannot put cameras inside the house.
No,
It's weird and it's privacy.
not without causing a lot more problems than they solve.
Yeah. But in this case, you might get away. It's fairly fair, I think, to say, hey, I've got a camera in the garage. I've got a camera outside my driveway. Um, I think it's fair to say that we've got cameras out because you're kind of semi-outdoors.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, I think that's fair. We'll see.
Yeah, and remember, every single Tesla has cameras in it.
No, I know, but it would be my customer's Tesla, not mine. So unless they shared the video, I would not know what happened,
It would probably be doable with terms and conditions so that if you rent, you agree that in the event of a dispute, Tesla's allowed to pull these records after the fact. I think that that's one of the big advantages to making this open to Teslas only, because initially, assuming the customer says, yes, I'm okay with that, when they agree to use the service, they have the ability to go in and grab that right now, today.
Yeah. And it's 100% safe or 99% safe.
Absolutely.
That's pretty good. Wow. I love it. This is gorgeous. So amazing that you put this together. It looks wonderful. It looks logical. It looks very enticing for me as an owner. I could make money now. And like you were saying earlier, there's all these ideas that are coming together that's changing the entire business model of buying a car that can just completely disrupt a Tesla ownership versus another brand's ownership. One is insurance. Once they figure out insurance, maybe they're going to charge much less insurance. Then there's FSD. If I could rent my car, right? So you kind of hit it on earlier, which is Tesla's already agreed and thought about and wanted to build a business where I can rent my car to people. Renting out my charger, it seems to be even much less of a difficulty, charge all that kind of stuff. It's much simpler. So they'd be open to that. Anyways, the point is that if I, as a car owner, can make money, one is renting my car out for Robotaxi, two is renting my charger, it just flips it. Like this earnings of my home charger in my garage could pay for my monthly lease payments that I would have to pay each month, or half of it or a quarter of it, whatever it is. And now it's all of a sudden, let me buy a Tesla because I'm going to make money.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, it's not reducing the price of a car up front is not the only way to reduce total cost of ownership and make this affordable for everyone. Absolutely.
So what do you think is the biggest issue? Why would Tesla not agree to something like this?
Why would they not agree to this?
Mm-hmm.
I have to admit, I didn't give a ton of thought to why they wouldn't agree to this. But my thinking
you just assumed this is a great idea. They're going to just say yes.
My thinking is that before agreeing or not agreeing to this, the next stage would be really to go in and pull some of their analytics to see whether this makes sense. Because they've got data on everywhere that cars have a home charger, where they go to, their battery levels. And they could probably run some models internally pretty easily to be able to say, yeah, wow, if we modeled it, we put these in there, that would help solve the problem. There's plenty of demand in these locations to do a pilot. Or, you know what, when we actually run the numbers, this makes no sense. Sorry, it doesn't work out. I would be surprised if that is the answer. But really what all this is about, then the value of any kind of a model like this and a financial and clickable user experience is to answer one simple question. Mm-hmm. Is this worth looking at further? And I think with the dollar amounts we're talking about here and all the great extra use cases you even added during this conversation, I don't know for sure. I think it's too early to say, yes, it's definitely a go. We're put $1 billion or $500 million behind it, whatever. But I think at this point, it should be good enough to say, okay, let's take a look a little bit deeper and try and work out what are the hurdles, what are the bugs, what are the economics, and where and how would this actually work if we tried to do a pilot?
And I'm liking this idea a lot. So you're a startup dude, right? You help invest and support folks who are looking at startups. That's why it's, this came to your mind. You're easily able to create a mock-up, create the business case for others to poke holes at. And
Absolutely.
I think about Airbnb, right, which was established right away. Most companies, they succeed, most startups, when they focus on a very specific use case and then expand. And so in this case, like that's what I was saying earlier, I don't know if you actually need to have like the chicken and egg, then like millions of Air Teslas and millions of people on, the buyer and seller marketplace. I don't think so. I think in this case, it's not like a marketplace. It's just more of, if there's like one guy with one home charger in one location, like near a stadium, and people go, oh, I'm going to find, not only are you going to rent out my parking there, but I'm going to be able to charge my Tesla while I get there. He can start doing it. Tesla I don't think they care about making money. It's about just giving Tesla owners more options. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It just makes sense that so this might not be a business that you and I can start, but it's something that Tesla needs to consider, because they have destination chargers. They have already got the insurance and the idea of a robotaxi. So why wouldn't they just allow you home chargers to rent that out too? So it makes
Exactly.
sense. I love
And
it.
I'm a little bit selfish. I've got a Tesla. I'd love to make some money from my charger. So it would be great to see this trialed out.
Let
I
me think
think
about that.
generally it can accelerate
Yeah.
the mission.
I don't know if I would do it. My neighborhood, do I want to make the extra money? Strangers coming into my driveway, probably not for me, but I'm thinking about it. Now, if I'm going to make, now in mind, again, you will tell me, right? The system will tell me how much money do I think I'll make in a year. If it's like $1,000 a year, $2,000 a year, I might. If no one's at home, right? If our lifestyle is such that nobody's at home, yeah, I might do it. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, it really depends on the location, just like real estate, location, 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 right? If you
Yeah.
are close to something where people would want to park and parking in your area is particularly expensive,
Yeah.
there's good money in this. There really is.
You know what's interesting? The way you just said that made me think that it's like supply and demand. And so if there is a very specific area where Tesla does not have enough superchargers or too much demand and they're complaining, well, this will just pop up and all the people living nearby will then be motivated to share theirs. And then it's just an automatic, the biggest problem areas that Tesla has will automatically be resolved. And it doesn't have to be the areas where there is no demand. There's no need to come to my neighborhood and supercharge. Fine. There's no need for you to do it. But the ones that need it, they're going to be enticed to do it. I love it.
You do a lot of good.
Okay. So
I love seeing things that don't have limits. And with something like this, you're not looking at having to make a new manufacturing plant or build out a ton of customer service or people to handle this. It scales almost like a software startup, which is really powerful.
Yeah, in one of your slides, you had the check marks everywhere. It's already there. The only thing is an app and marketing it, telling people it exists. That's basically the only thing missing, because they already have the referral credits, and so they're already able to reward people, and they already got the payment system and all that. So, and then they're tracking all the charger usage anyways.
Yep.
I love it. So what do you want? What do you wish happens with this video? Are you hoping that a Tesla executive will see this? And are you hoping that they will consider this as a business for themselves? What are you looking for?
I would love for Tesla to consider this. I would love to talk to them. There's a lot more details in the business plan if they want to poke through that. I'm not doing this for personal profit or because I want to start a business. I just think it's a great idea, and I would love to see them do it. And I'd love to help if I can.
Love it. Marc, you did a lot of work on this. And so if you're a viewer, audience member, please tell us. I mean, do you think that this has, there could easily be a major flaw in your thinking?
That's why I'm putting it here. I want to find out.
Are you guys dumb? And it's like, this will never happen. Please share that idea with us, because it's I like, maybe like you said, my first pass, I'm going, this sounds like a decent idea, so I'd like to talk about it. But whenever that happens, I always like, I like something's missing, like something big. I'm just not realizing that I'm so dumb.
But I mean, that's the nature of innovation, right? You start out with very little information and you fill the rest in with assumptions. And the more you dig into it, the more you experiment, the more you get data, the more you get feedback, the more assumption bookends start shrinking with fact. And eventually you get to an answer. A lot of times the hurdles that come up, and there are always plenty of hurdles, you can find a way around. And Tesla's amazing at that, frankly.
Yeah.
But to your point, sometimes you do end up hitting a wall. So it'd be great to see where this goes.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mark. Please follow him. You can find him at Game Change Ideas on Medium and on LinkedIn. He's Marc Folch, Game Change Ideas. Thank you again so much, Mark. That was fun. Appreciate you. That was a lot of work on your side. Thank you.
Really, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.